Jiro Manio was once the golden boy of Philippine cinema, a prodigy whose acting in Magnifico made audiences cry and critics call him the future of the industry. But within just a few years, the same child who captured millions of hearts would become a national mystery. How did a celebrated actor, once at the peak of fame, end up wandering alone in an airport? What really happened behind the cameras? And why did every attempt to save him seem to fall apart?
Masubukan yung time travel kasi nagsasawa na siyang mabuhay.
This is the story of fame's dark flip side. A young star's rise, disappearance, and fight for redemption. It's a story of how success can turn into isolation, and how a single photograph can change everything. But even after everything he's been through, Jiro's journey might not be over yet. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming deep dive stories. We've got more untold journeys, comebacks, and hidden truths you won't want to miss. Before the world saw him as a fallen star, Jiro Manio was a name that symbolized pure talent. The transition from the intro is almost cinematic. From questions about his downfall to the glow of his beginnings. Jiro's story started long before the controversies. It began with a spark that lit up Philippine cinema. At just 10 years old, Jiro starred in Magnifico, 2003, a film that would redefine what child actors were capable of. His portrayal of a selfless boy trying to help his family wasn't just acting. It felt real, raw, and far beyond his years. That performance earned him the Gawad Urian Award for Best Actor, making him the youngest to ever receive it. Critics hailed him as a once-in-a-generation talent. Soon after, he appeared in acclaimed films like Bagong Bawan and Mila, proving he wasn't a one-hit wonder. By his early teens, Jiro was a household name. TV networks competed for his next project, and audiences followed his every move. But behind all the smiles and awards, few noticed the pressure building. For a kid barely entering high school, the spotlight was blinding. And fame, though glittering, was already showing cracks beneath the surface. But as every child star eventually learns, the camera's flash doesn't shine forever. And for Jiro, that light was about to burn out faster than anyone expected. The glow of fame can make everything look perfect, until the lights go out. After years of adoration, Jiro's once bright image began to flicker. Rumors of erratic behavior surfaced, and insiders whispered about missed tapings, exhaustion, and personal struggles. By 2009, ABS-CBN's talent arm, Star Magic, quietly confirmed what fans had been fearing. Jiro was being released from his contract due to unprofessional conduct. For many, the news didn't make sense. How could the boy who once embodied innocence and discipline suddenly be labeled unreliable? Those who worked with him described a young man lost between two worlds. Too old to be the cute child star everyone adored, yet too young to handle the weight of adult fame. The fast pace of showbiz, combined with personal family challenges, began to wear him down. He was still just a teenager, but the industry moved on quickly. New faces took his place, new projects rolled out, and Jiro faded from the spotlight almost overnight. The same audiences who once celebrated his every line now barely noticed his absence. But the silence wouldn't last forever. Because years later, the world would see him again. Not on the big screen, but in a place no one expected, and under circumstances that would shock the nation. After the headlines about his dismissal, Jiro disappeared from public view. For a while, it seemed like he'd simply stepped away. But behind closed doors, the young actor was battling something far heavier than lost fame. The industry's silence was replaced by concern when reports emerged in 2011 that Jiro had checked himself into a rehabilitation center. He admitted later that he'd been struggling, emotionally, mentally, and with the pressure of growing up in an industry that never let him breathe. That decision to seek help was his first real attempt at a comeback, not in showbiz, but in life itself. Friends and former co-stars expressed hope that he was finally on the road to recovery. For a brief moment, it looked like Jiro might pull himself out of the spiral and rebuild what fame had taken from him.
Masubukan yung time travel kasi nagsasawa na siyang mabuhay.
But recovery isn't a straight line. After leaving the facility, Jiro tried to reconnect with old colleagues and take small acting gigs. Yet the industry that once embraced him now felt colder, more distant. Opportunities were scarce, and every reminder of who he used to be only deepened his frustration. Still, Jiro kept trying, until one day, years later, his name returned to headlines in the most unexpected and heartbreaking way. A single image would reignite the nation's memory of him and change everything once again. For years, Jiro stayed out of the spotlight, his story seemingly closed. But in 2015, his name reappeared. Not in movie credits, but in viral posts spreading like wildfire across social media. Photos surfaced of a man who looked nothing like the bright-eyed boy from Magnifico. Disheveled, frail, and wandering aimlessly around Ninoy Aquino International Airport Terminal 3, Jiro Manio was barely recognizable. Witnesses claimed he had been at the terminal for days, living off scraps and kindness from strangers. When the news broke, disbelief rippled through the nation. People couldn't reconcile the image of the young prodigy they once admired with the man now living on the streets. It was heartbreaking and deeply unsettling. Comedian I. Delas, alas, who had once played his on-screen mother, stepped forward to help. She took him in, arranged medical care, and promised to help him start over. The public rallied behind her gesture, seeing a glimmer of hope amid the tragedy.
Hindi ko sila nakatrabaho. Iba trabaho ko, ibang hindi ako artista.
For a while, things seemed to be improving. Jiro expressed gratitude, appeared to be regaining stability, and even smiled in a few interviews. But beneath that fragile recovery, old wounds remained. The internet's pity was fleeting, and the reality of healing was far more complicated than one viral rescue could fix. Because as Jiro soon discovered, escaping the spotlight was easy, but escaping himself wasn't. For a brief moment, it seemed like Jiro's story had finally found its turning point. After I. Delas Alas's public show of compassion, he underwent another round of rehabilitation and expressed genuine hope for a new beginning. Interviews captured him smiling again, speaking softly about redemption and thanking those who hadn't given up on him. It was the kind of comeback story everyone wanted to believe. But behind the cameras, recovery proved to be far more fragile than it looked. As months passed, reports began surfacing that Jiro was once again struggling, physically and emotionally. Some close to him mentioned he was trying to rebuild quietly, away from the media, while others hinted that he was fighting battles people couldn't see. Each new headline about him came with uncertainty. Was he healing or was he slipping again? By 2016, he was said to have re-entered rehabilitation due to health issues, marking yet another attempt to restart. For fans, it was heartbreaking. Every glimmer of hope seemed followed by another setback. Still, Jiro kept trying to rebuild. But in the years that followed, that silence returned once more, until 2020, when his name re-emerged in the news again. Only this time, it wasn't a story about recovery. It was about an incident that would once again shatter whatever peace he had managed to find. Yet again, the script twisted, this time into one of the darkest chapters of his life. In January 2020, reports emerged that Jiro Manio was arrested in Marikina City, charged with alleged frustrated homicide after an alleged stabbing of a man named Zeus Doctolero. According to police, the incident happened around 7:20 p.m. along M.A. Roxas Street, Barangay San Roque. Doctolero was walking when Manio allegedly attacked and stabbed him multiple times. Manio, who by then was 27 years old and attempting to rebuild his life, claimed that the victim attacked him first with a helmet. The public reaction was swift. How did the child genius who once touched hearts with Magnifico wind up here? For many, it felt like the final act of a familiar tragedy. Talent, collapse, and chaos. This incident didn't just reopen old wounds. It raised fresh questions about recovery, accountability, and the unforgiving glare of fame. Was this relapse or something deeper? The lines between personal battle and public spectacle blurred even more. Up next, how, after all this, Jiro began turning towards service instead of the spotlight, and what that shift tells us about what he really wants now. After the chaos of 2020, most people assumed Jiro Manio's story had reached its tragic end. But once again, he surprised everyone. Instead of chasing another comeback, he quietly turned towards something more meaningful: service. Years after his legal troubles, Jiro resurfaced in reports around 2023, not as an actor, but as a volunteer at a Department of Health-run rehabilitation center in Bataan. There, he wasn't the star. He was helping others who were walking the same difficult path he once did. In interviews, Jiro shared that he had been assisting in therapy sessions and group counseling, finding purpose in giving back. He admitted he still wasn't ready to face the camera again, saying his focus was on healing, not headlines. The humility in his tone contrasted sharply with the child prodigy who once commanded screens nationwide. By 2024, Jiro reiterated that he hadn't closed the door to showbiz, but he wanted to return only when he was fully ready, both physically and mentally. It was a quieter, more grounded version of him, one who understood the cost of fame and the value of peace. But just when people began to accept his new life away from fame, Jiro made a move that shocked everyone. One that reignited public debate about his past, his struggles, and his legacy. Just when people thought Jiro had finally found peace, he did something that caught everyone off guard. In early 2024, he appeared on the popular show Pinoy Pawn Stars, carrying with him a piece of Philippine film history: his 2004 Gawad Urian Best Actor trophy, the one he earned for Magnifico. Viewers couldn't believe what they were seeing. That golden symbol of his early brilliance was suddenly up for sale. He sold the award for 75,000 pesos, explaining that he needed the money for practical reasons, and that the trophy no longer defined who he was. To him, it was a relic from a life he'd already lived, one filled with both triumph and heartbreak. But online reactions were divided. Some praised his honesty and humility, while others criticized the sale as a sign of desperation. The moment became viral once again, stirring memories of his past and questions about his present. For many, the sale symbolized closure, an emotional letting go of the fame that once consumed him. For others, it was a haunting reminder of how far he had fallen.
At ito nga yung Gawad Urian na napili ko dahil nga pinakamahusay na aktor yung nakalagay.
But not long after that episode aired, a new development would rewrite the tone of Jiro's story entirely. One that involved an old friend, forgiveness, and perhaps the start of a true second chance. After the emotional shock of seeing Jiro sell his most prized trophy, fans wondered what could possibly come next. But just months later, an unexpected reunion melted hearts across social media. In mid-2024, Jiro reconnected with the person who had once been his biggest supporter, I de las Alas, the same woman who rescued him during his darkest days in 2015 reached out again. And this time, the meeting was different. Photos of their reunion quickly spread online. I shared that she was proud to see how much Jiro had matured, describing him as calmer and more grounded. Gone was the boy lost in confusion. In his place stood a man trying to rebuild his life quietly, step by step. The two spoke about forgiveness, growth, and letting go of the past, both the good and the painful parts. For Jiro, it wasn't just a reunion. It was a chance to reconnect with a part of himself he had buried years ago, the side that still believed in second chances. The gesture from I reignited hope among fans who had followed his long, complicated story. And soon after that emotional moment, another headline began circulating. This time not about loss or controversy, but something no one expected. Whispers of a long-awaited comeback. After years of headlines filled with loss and redemption, the word comeback suddenly began appearing next to Jiro Manio's name again. Early in 2025, entertainment pages started buzzing. Jiro was reportedly returning to acting. Not in a major network production, but in a small, independent short film titled Aeroplanong Papel. The project was modest, but the symbolism was powerful. The title alone echoed his own journey. Fragile, hopeful, and trying to soar once more. In interviews that followed, Jiro admitted he was nervous. He said he had to relearn acting, describing the experience as both humbling and healing. This wasn't the confident prodigy from Magnifico. This was a man rediscovering his voice after years of silence. In a February 2025 sit-down with One News PH, he spoke about regret, forgiveness, and the slow, painful process of regaining self-worth. Yet not everyone was convinced. Some questioned if the comeback was real or just wishful thinking, especially since Jiro himself had previously said he wasn't ready for showbiz again. But whether temporary or not, this glimpse of hope reminded people that his story wasn't over. Because just when it seemed Jiro was finally stepping back into the light, another chapter of his past, one that had followed him for years, would quietly resurface, revealing a deeply personal side of his journey. As Jiro's tentative return to acting began to gain attention, another part of his story quietly reemerged, one that had nothing to do with fame, but everything to do with identity. For years, there had been whispers about his search for his biological father, a Japanese man he had never really known. During the height of his fame, this detail was often mentioned in passing interviews, but as his life unraveled, the topic faded. Until 2024, when old reports of his search began circulating again online. In some accounts, it was said that I de las Alas had even tried to help him find his father years earlier, hoping that reconnecting with his roots might bring him some peace. But no solid updates ever followed. Whether he had truly found closure or not remained unclear, and Jiro himself stayed silent about it in recent interviews. For many fans, that silence spoke volumes. Behind the awards, the struggles, and the fleeting comebacks was still a young man trying to piece together the missing fragments of his past. It was a reminder that some wounds aren't healed by fame, or even by forgiveness. And yet, despite all the unanswered questions about his family and future, Jiro continued to move forward, determined to prove that he was more than just the tragedy people remembered. Even with the rumors, the reunions, and the lingering mysteries about his past, Jiro Manio began showing signs of quiet strength. The world had long defined him by his lowest moments, but away from the cameras, he was slowly rewriting that image. At the rehabilitation center where he continued to volunteer, Jiro reportedly took on mentoring roles, guiding others who were battling the same demons he once faced. Those who met him described a man who had softened, humbled by everything he'd endured. He began speaking in small interviews again, but this time without the showbiz polish. His words were simple, honest, and often reflective. He talked about gratitude, redemption, and the importance of patience. Gone was the bitterness or defensiveness from years prior. In its place was a calm acceptance of the path he had to walk. Still, rebuilding a life after going viral for tragedy wasn't easy. Every time his name trended, it reopened old wounds. Proof that fame never truly fades, even when you want it to. But this time, Jiro faced it differently. He wasn't running from his story anymore. And as his quiet transformation continued, whispers began to rise again. Not about scandal or pity, but about how far he'd come and what his journey revealed about the fragile line between fame and freedom. With Jiro's story spanning 2 decades, separating truth from rumor became its own challenge. Every time his name resurfaced online, so did a flood of unverified stories. Some claiming new downfalls, others hinting at secret projects or mysterious disappearances. Many of these updates spread fast, amplified by social media accounts chasing clicks rather than facts. But when the noise settles, a clearer picture emerges. What's verified is powerful enough on its own. Jiro was a prodigy who won one of the Philippines' most prestigious acting awards at 10, fell into years of personal struggle, and faced real public humiliation in 2015 when he was found homeless at an airport. He went through rehabilitation multiple times, faced legal trouble in 2020, and eventually found meaning in helping others recover. Then, in 2024, he sold his most prized award, a symbolic moment that reignited attention, and by 2025 began cautiously stepping back into acting. Those are the facts. Everything else, from whispers about his finances to rumors about a hidden return to fame, remains speculation. And while people may argue over what's true, one thing is undeniable. Jiro's life continues to fascinate because it reflects something raw and human. And as the noise fades, what's left is the question that keeps people watching. Not what he's lost, but whether redemption is truly within reach. Even after all the twists, controversies, and endless online chatter, Jiro Manio's story continues to resonate. Not because it's glamorous, but because it's painfully real. His journey exposes the darker side of fame, especially for child stars who are celebrated before they even understand what success truly means. Behind every award, every spotlight moment, was a child who never got to grow up away from public judgment. What makes Jiro's story so unforgettable is how it mirrors the cycle so many public figures face. The rise, the fall, the attempt to rebuild, and the world's obsession with watching every step. But beyond the headlines, there's something deeply human about his resilience. Time and again, he was written off, yet somehow he keeps finding the strength to start over. It's easy to romanticize comebacks, but Jiro's isn't about glory. It's about survival. His story forces us to ask how society treats its fallen idols. Do we root for their recovery, or do we just wait for the next scandal? And as Jiro takes small, uncertain steps back into the light, his journey reminds us of something most people forget: that sometimes the most powerful comeback isn't about fame at all. but about finding peace in a world that once cheered for your downfall. Jiro Manio's life is more than just a cautionary tale. It's a mirror reflecting how fame can lift someone to greatness and just as quickly break them apart. From being the youngest actor ever to win one of the country's highest honors, to losing everything and starting again from nothing, his journey shows both the beauty and the brutality of the spotlight. Today, Jiro stands not as the tragic figure many remember, but as a man learning to rebuild quietly, away from judgment. His story asks a question we all need to think about. Do we truly allow people to change? Or do we trap them in who they used to be? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. Jiro Manio's journey reminds us that sometimes the hardest role to play is yourself. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next deep dive into the stories behind the spotlight.